Delaware Governor John Carney orders all bars in the ocean resort areas to close ahead of the July 4th weekend. The number of derelict accounts who have yet to pay their assessment has doubled from the same point in time 1 year ago. Board member Steve Larson pleads for order and for members to just get along as the board becomes increasingly dysfunctional. The movement to erect a third dog station in Middlesex Beach stalls. The board votes to abolish the COVID-19 task force, once chaired by Mike O'Mara. And Middlesex Beach has a new board member to replace Mike O'Mara, who quit the board as well as the COVID-19 task force in June of 2020. And a look at the mailbag. My name is Greg Pichler with the MXB Wire, and you're watching my monthly update for August 4th, 2020. On Tuesday, June 30th, after a spike in new coronavirus cases, Governor John Carney ordered all bars in the resort areas to close ahead of the July 4th weekend. Carney also deferred entering Phase 3 reopening plans indefinitely. Carney says, and I quote, "Too many people have sacrificed too much for us to see another really dramatic uptick. From 18 to about 30 is where most of these new positives are occurring, and they are mostly occurring at zip codes in the beach area," end quote. The Delaware Health Director, Dr. Karil Ratey, says, and I quote, "We have also, since that time, learned of several lifeguards as well as a number of restaurant and bar employees who have become positive," end quote. Delaware remains in Phase 2 reopening. Sit-down restaurant service, however, is open at this time. As a homeowners association, we really dodged a bullet in this pandemic. Our beach had to close to comply with orders from the governor for approximately 2 months. Since Middlesex Beach reopened on May 16th, there has only been one new case of coronavirus, and that case involved a staff member. We have to continue to be diligent in observance of the directives the board set down to the use of common walkways. All common walkways to the beach are unidirectional. If you observe someone on the common walkway who is not wearing a mask, it is incumbent on you to remind them to wear one. That includes children. We are reportedly only 3 months away from a vaccine. In his report on budget/finance, Steve Larson reported that the Homeowners Association is currently operating at $57,000 in derelict accounts, approximately $25,000 more than at the end of July of 2019. Whereas the budget for revenues is $570,000, the actual revenue collected is $490,000 or thereabouts. If the numbers do not dramatically improve over the course of the next 2 weeks, the Homeowners Association will be operating at double the amount of derelict accounts as compared to the same time last year. Larson also reported that the community is operating under budget in a number of expense areas. The Homeowners Association is under budget in the expense area beach patrol by the amount approximately $15,000. The Homeowners Association is also under budget in the expense area community patrol by approximately $12,000. Geoffrey Sella stated that the comparison in the size of derelict accounts to last year may be misleading, as the Homeowners Association had issues with the invoicing in 2019, and that a large number of accounts were settled in the month of July of 2019. Ellen Throop stated the delay in the start of the season due to the coronavirus pandemic is likely responsible for the fact that both the Beach Patrol and the Community Patrol are operating under budget. The shortfall in revenue over the course of the pandemic is predictable. If you divide the amount of derelict accounts by the assessment, you arrive at 24 residences. Thus, approximately 10% of the community is delinquent in paying their assessment. That figure closely follows the current national unemployment rate of 13.7%. The fallout of the coronavirus pandemic is primarily and chiefly responsible for the delinquency in payments. Unfortunately, we should not expect the situation to improve until the economy returns to normal, which a number of economists suggest will be the third quarter of 2021. The board discussed the prospect of erecting a third dog station in the community. Currently, the Homeowners Association has 2 dog stations. Both are located on the Pine side. Margie Cyr, who is spearheading the effort in erecting dog stations, reported that there was no progress in erecting a third dog station. Shecter is reportedly planning to erect the dog station on the ocean side of the community. However, he has been receiving lots of pushback from residents on the ocean side. The effort to bring the matter of the rental tax to the community for a vote also appears to have stalled. Despite the passage of a motion on April 13th to engage the staff lawyer to help the proponents draft a proxy for a covenant change, there has been no activity on the subject since. Apparently, Homeowners Association President Margie Cyr, seeing that the proponents of a rental tax did not have the votes to compel owners who offer their property for lease to report their gross rental income and pay an 8% tax on their gross earnings, decided to table the matter for the balance of the tenure of the current board. When Mike O'Mara held a position on the board, the proponents of a rental tax had 4 votes. With Mike O'Mara's departure, the proponents now only have 3 votes, namely Marty Shecter, Nancy Glasgow, and Steve Larson. The proponents of the rental tax need 5 votes to bring the matter before the community for a vote. The board discussed a proposal put forward by Marty Shecter to purchase 2 additional 100-foot Moby mats. Shecter reported he had successfully negotiated a price on the additional Moby mats with a vendor and advocated proceeding with the acquisition. Currently, the community has 1 Moby mat located on the common walkway adjacent to Addy Road. The Moby mat and the clay base beneath it frequently gets washed out by storms, and after which the mat needs to be reinstalled. Shecter reported that the members of the community are solidly in favor of purchasing the additional Moby mats. Shecter stated that the current restrictions on the walkways, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the fact that the walkways are unidirectional, coupled with the distance from the walkways to the ocean, make access to the beach difficult, especially with residents with mobility challenges. Shecter did not volunteer the cost of the 2 additional Moby mats on an ongoing basis. However, he did state that the expense of the mats did not necessarily have to be paid for out of the general operating budget, but rather the expense can be absorbed out of the retained earnings account. The retained earnings account is typically used to build the reserve fund for the beach replenishment. Alex Sella weighed in, saying that the real cost of the Moby mats does not stop with the purchase price. Sella reported that the Moby mats require considerable labor to maintain, and that in light of the additional maintenance cost and the fact that the mats need to be replaced every 5 years, the real cost of the Moby mats to the community add up to an annual cost of $200 per resident. Sella reported that over the course of the last tropical storm that hit the area on Thursday, July 10th, the clay underneath the Moby mat had eroded, requiring staff and volunteers to lift the mat, resurface the area, and reinstall the mat, all of which required over 12 man-hours for this one incident. Geoff Sella weighed in, saying that he was in favor of Moby mats, but said he would vote against any motion to purchase additional Moby mats. Sella stated that he has seen selective communication that Shecter sent to a number of community members along with their responses. Sella stated his main objection to the purchase of additional Moby mats had to do with process. Sella said that prior to purchasing the mats, the board needs to engage the community in dialogue to determine if the community wants the mats and is willing to pay for the ongoing cost they entail. In effect, Sella pointed out that Shecter is only familiar with the views of the community members he is in communication with. Sella stated that a number of members are very concerned about the amount of the assessment. Sella further stated that the 2020-2021 budget for Moby mats has already been decided during the budget discussions in May of 2020, and at that time the budget did not allocate any monies for additional Moby mats. Sella stated that 1, in light of the fact that a number of community members have said they cannot afford the assessment as is, and 2, in light of the fact that the purchase of additional Moby mats will have substantial impact on the operating budget, the board should not move forward without having a dialogue with the community. Sella further stated that paying for the Moby mats out of the retained earnings account was, quote, fiscally irresponsible. Next, Margie Cyr weighed in, stating she was very concerned as to why the board is having this discussion at this point in the fiscal year. Cyr pointed out that the board had discussions on Moby mats in the budget discussions for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Cyr stated that the board wishes to consider the expense in light of a new fiscal budget. It can do so, or it can address the expense of the Moby mats in the fiscal year when the community's fiscal condition is better known. At one point in the discussion, Shecter and Alex Sella engage each other in an exchange. Shecter stated that the problem with the Facilities Committee is that of the 8 members on the committee, quote, only one individual actually seems to be working, end quote, referring to Alex Sella. After which, Sella took great exception to Shecter's words, calling out Shecter's statements as, quote, derogatory. Geoff Sella abruptly interrupted the exchange that ensued between Shecter and his son, Alex Sella, saying that Shecter and he, Geoff Sella, have an issue to work out and that Shecter and Alex have an issue to work out. However, Sella asked Shecter to focus on the discussion surrounding the purchase of the additional Moby mats while putting aside the open animus between the parties. Ellen Throop weighed in, stating that the board has engaged in discussions surrounding Moby mats in the past and nothing significant has changed in the budget to revisit Moby mats again. Throop advised that the Moby mat issue was one that the incoming board can revisit after the election scheduled for September 5th, 2020. Throop further stated that the purpose of the reserve budget should be limited to recovery efforts in the wake of a storm and any other unforeseen event, like a snow removal, for example. At one point, Geoff Sella voiced a concern that a board member, in this case Shecter, acted unilaterally to negotiate a contract with a vendor, circumventing the board. Sella's statement drew a swift rebuff from Steve Larson for referring to Shecter in the third person. Throop advanced Sella's concern, stating the legal opinion that all board members, including Shecter, have the authority to enter into contracts on behalf of the association. In the event that a board member enters a contract with a vendor, such a contract would be binding regardless of whether the board member acted with the authority of the board or not. A visibly shaken and frustrated Shecter abruptly closed the discussion on the matter of additional Moby mats and moved to purchase the additional Moby mats with no further dialogue with the membership. Steve Larson seconded Schecter's motion. Marty Shecter, Nancy Glasgow, and Steve Larson voted in favor of Schecter's motion. Geoff Sella, Alex Sella, Ellen Throop, Margie Cyr, and Tristan Krueger voted in opposition to Schecter's motion. The motion to buy the additional Moby mats failed. I agree with Margie Cyr's comments. The matter of the purchase of the additional Moby mats should not have been a topic of discussion on the agenda. The 2020-2021 budget had been set down as of May 2020. The budget included support for one and only one Moby mat. The discussion, which lasted 30 minutes, deteriorated the further it went. It is exactly this behavior on the part of Shecter, in this case, on the event a single board member exercises authority, circumventing the board's authority, and negotiates prices and contracts on behalf of the association, that exacerbates dysfunction amongst the board members. It is also exactly this behavior that causes these meetings to stretch out over 6.5 hours. Over the course of the executive session, Steve Larson reportedly expressed concerns about the ongoing hostilities between Alex Sella and Marty Shecter, and the ongoing hostilities between Geoff Sella and Marty Shecter, and the ongoing hostilities between Ellen Throop and Marty Shecter. Not just the hostilities expressed openly on the conference call, but also over the course of the last 2 years since Marty Shecter and Nancy Glasgow were first elected to the board. Apparently, board member Marty Shecter is at the center of these ongoing hostilities. Larson pleaded with the board members for order and asked the members to make the effort to interact in a more cordial manner. Unfortunately, Larson's words had little effect, as the pugilist, of which Larson himself emerged as one, were right back at each other's throats not less than 1 hour after his impassioned speech. At one point in the discussions that followed, Marty Shecter reportedly admonished Alex Sella for not apologizing in public for a matter that he apologized to Shecter for in private. At another point in the discussions that followed, Marty Shecter recited a past event involving a conflict with Ellen Throop. While Shecter was cutting down a tree on his property, Ellen Throop reportedly wrote Shecter an email complaining of the noise. In a carefully worded response to Throop, Shecter characterized Throop's complaint as a form of, quote, harassment. The board discussed whether to disband the COVID-19 task force, as the board has been managing the response to the pandemic since the end of June 2020. Margie Cyr moved to disband the COVID-19 task force and to send each member an email thanking them for their service. Alex Sella seconded Cyr's motion. All board members except Marty Shecter voted in favor of the motion. Marty Shecter abstained. The board voted for Carol Paul to fill the vacancy left by Mike O'Mara. Paul is to assume O'Mara's term, which is scheduled to run until September of 2021. Paul, whose family owns 3 properties in Middlesex Beach, has reportedly never run for a board position, nor has she ever served on the board. And now, time for the mail. In response to the monthly update for April 30th, 2020, on May 5th, 2020, Scott Van Ness at 7 Bayberry Road writes in saying, I continue to be dismayed at the continuing search by certain owners to tax owners who lease their properties. I have felt a schism developing between seasonal owners and residential owners building for some time. I find no justification for this fee and believe there is no proof that it is needed. I am very disappointed that the board keeps this issue alive. They should spend more time on maintenance and necessary services and not use their positions to search for ways to tax some owners to the benefit of other owners. You can read Scott's full comment online in the discussion section of the article MXB Wire Monthly Update for April 30th, 2020. In response to a broadcast email message dated May 1st, 2020, on May 3rd, 2020, Bill Gay at 113 Evergreen Road writes in saying, remove me from your mailing list. By having mailed this to me, you are in violation of your own privacy policy in your childish publication because you sent it to me without me ever having given you permission to do so. I encourage you to stop your publication before you become the laughingstock of our community. All the broadcast email messages from the MXB Wire include a link to unsubscribe. Watch for my next installment, scheduled for Saturday, August 22nd, 2020, where I will rate the contributions of all 4 incumbent candidates in advance of this year's election, scheduled for September 5th, 2020. Take care, everyone.